welcome to the latest episode of the Rob Harkavy interviews, only on Out News Global. Now, my next guest, who, after a long hiatus away from the industry, has not only come back to the business, she's released 4 songs in 4 months, which is pretty good going. Now, her latest single, Moving Too Fast, is already firmly ensconced on the Out News Global playlist here at HQ, and I personally can't wait to meet her. So let's give a massive Out News Global welcome to the most excellent and supremely talented Claire Littley. Hello, Claire.
Oh, thank you so much. That's such a lovely introduction, and it's lovely to meet you. Thank you for
Likewise. Well, thanks for your compliments on the introduction. I can assure you it's all downhill from now. So thank you. Okay. Thank you so much for joining us. And I want to dive in with the track that I suppose really delivered you some kind of, I think it's fair to say, global fame. And that was your cover of Fly Me to the Moon, which I think most people will recognize as a Frank. It's been done by lots of people, but people will recognize it, I think, as a Frank Sinatra song. So can you tell us the story of that and how that came to have, I mean, millions, tens of millions of views all over the world?
Yeah, so I tried to keep it short because it's a long story. I spoke about it actually in a podcast back in August after I released the first song, Love Will Set You Free. And I was asked onto a podcast by a guy that's very heavily involved in the Evangelion community, which is what Fly Me to the Moon was recorded for. So the backstory to it, and we talked about that at length in the podcast, but the backstory is I came to music quite late, and I'd started actually singing. I discovered that I could sing when I was at uni. So it was sort of early 20s. And I'd started doing some music, and I'd sort of gotten a demo cassette together, and I ended up in London, and by that point I'd gotten a little bit of experience. Left a cassette at Abbey Road Studios on the reception desk, and one of the guys there picked it up. And long story short, basically there was someone at Abbey Road, another recording artist, and she basically had said to me, do you know anyone that sings jazz? And do you sing? What do you sing? And I was like, I've not really done any jazz, but sort of soulful, bluesy, that type of stuff. And so I ended up auditioning. She said, would you like to audition for this track? We're looking for a British jazz singer. And I ended up doing the session, which was incredible because I had a 24-piece string orchestra. Wow. And we were at Abbey Road, and I'd sort of been hanging out there with the guys. So I'd ended up working there in terms of collaborating on some, writing some songs together, and just sort of collaborating with the guys that worked there. And basically, we did the recording. I was paid for the session fee. And they said to me it was going to be used in a TV series in Japan for a manga anime. And at the time, no one really knew what manga was. So, roll on sort of 10 years, 10, 20 years now. Evangelion went absolutely huge, has an incredibly sort of cult-like following of, absolutely very, very loyal fans, absolutely love it. And my version of the song was used on the credits for the TV series, which is now on Netflix. So it's kind of, it's just exploded.
You say jazz, it has a kind of really lovely bossa nova beat in there, isn't it? I don't know about Japanese anime, it felt to me like a Brazilian beach. So it's absolutely lovely. But I suppose, people who aren't familiar with anime, it's massive, isn't it? And I suppose the best parallel I can draw for a parochial British audience, it's like having your track on maybe the John Lewis Christmas ad or something. It just, you get noticed and it goes bonkers, but it's times 100 because it's all over the world on Netflix.
Well, I think it's become, what's really important about the story is Evangelion is there's a real depth to the story. So it's not just a cartoon, it's not just an animation. It's got a huge amount of depth to the story, and the characters in that, they explore, there's quite a lot of character studies. A lot of the characters have either come from broken homes, or there's a lot of dysfunction. So it deals with sort of parental dynamics and all of the sort of things that when you're a 15-year-old, 16-year-old, you would be kind of really relating to. So at the end of a traumatic episode, because a lot of the episodes are pretty raw, I mean, it's quite it's pretty full on. So at the end of that traumatic episode, suddenly you've got this very soothing fly me to the moon, and it was very healing for people. And for a really long time now, the meaningfulness to me of the song is really around how it's been a help to people in their lives. So it's been very soothing for people that have had anxiety, or they've been going through a depression and people will listen to that song because it helps to lift their spirits. And I think that's a wonderful thing about it. It's that's incredibly meaningful for that.
That's what music can do, isn't it? Now, I mentioned in my introduction that your spurt of activity over the last few months comes after really quite some time of not releasing anything. Now, famously the music industry, and unless you're Adele, is all sort of about momentum and keeping going, especially in this day and age. It's so easy to be forgotten. So what was it that took you away from the business for so long?
Well, I think as we sort of mentioned the podcast, that was the first time I'd really spoken about my partner that had died in an accident. Kind of, it's over 20 years now, but it impacted my life in such a way that it wasn't the only reason I stopped music, but I think it was the main reason. I think if you want to sing with heart and passion and feeling, when your heart is really broken, that's incredibly hard. And I think some people are able to channel their pain into their music, and other people aren't. We're all different, aren't we? I think for me, I did not intend, it wasn't like, oh, I'm having a break. I felt like I'm not doing, I don't want to do music anymore. And I think there's a lot of complexity around that as well. I think grief is one of the hardest things that we have to deal with as human beings. But I think sometimes that grief can be complicated hugely. So for me, things that I haven't really spoken about. So because it was her first relationship with a woman. Her mother was very homophobic. I wasn't allowed to see her when she died. I wasn't invited to the funeral. I was wiped out. And I think that left me with a huge amount of residual baggage and shame, actually, in some respects, that I on a lot of levels I didn't realize I was, a lot of levels you continue with your life and you get on with things. I've worked in design for a very, very long time, and that's been pretty successful, but in other ways these things affect your life. It's been a huge it's had a huge impact on my life
I mean,
on lots of levels.
I think they tell me bereavement and grief is for another interview, but I do think that, you know, and you can chop it as many ways as you like, but I think for me, I lost a child 30 years ago, not a baby who was miscarried, you know, a living child. Not that I'm dissing anybody who grieves miscarriages, because that is also a terrible thing. And I think I remember someone explained to me at the time is that as humans, we're built for bereavement. You know, as soon as you're old enough to kind of understand the way of the world, you know that people are going to die. But the difference is you kind of, sad as it is, you know your parents are probably going to die before you. You hope and kind of know that if you're in a long-term relationship, one of you will die first, but probably when you're old, and probably a cancer or heart disease or something. And then you have the unusual bereavements, unusual deaths, which you experienced, obviously, with a tragic accident, and which I experienced with the death of a child. And grief is very, very different under those circumstances. And if you say have an expected bereavement, as it were, and I don't think you ever get over it, ever. You know, time takes the raw edges off, but you just learn to live with it, don't you?
Absolutely. And I think what you've described there is not, you know, these are traumas. So when it's unexpected and when it's sudden, you know, I think it's important for me, you know, you messaged me earlier to ask me if it was okay to bring this up. And I actually spoke to my therapist when I was first, you know, I was doing music, and I was like, I know I've got an interview coming. I know this is going to be asked. It's something that I want to be able to manage, because I knew that it would trigger me. You know, talking about it today will trigger me, and it will stay with me for the next few days. But I know how to manage that. So I did some work as a therapist as well, as you know, and you know, trainee, and I've dealt with grief, and you know, I know how to manage my trauma now. And I think when you asked me, I thought, oh, it's hard for me. It's easier than it has been. And I think these things are, because the more you talk about them, the easier it becomes. But I think it's really important for me to talk about that for other people, because it's the things that we don't talk about and the difficulties that we have with those things that help to perpetuate the shame around them. You know, oh, I should be feeling like this, or I should be feeling. Actually, you feel how you feel, and you're ready when you're ready to move on from these things.
I mean, it is interesting. It is interesting that you didn't put it into music, where so many artists do channel their emotions. But I suppose we're all different, and
well, it is now. It's being channeled now, Rob, because everything that I am, you know, it's part of me. That experience and that loss and your loss is an integral part of how you are.
Absolutely.
You know, it probably gives you more empathy and understanding when you meet someone else that's had a trauma, because you know, you get it, don't you? And I think these things sort of can, you know, break us, but they, like everything in life, there's always a balance. You know, it's a word that I use all the time, and I think there's the depths of the lows that we experience. The lower we go, the higher extremes of joy we can also experience. I think you always get that in return. And the simplest things for me, you know, the very simple things can make me really happy. And I think you appreciate those things so much more because you've had that depth of painful experience.
And I think that's probably been exacerbated over the past couple of years, where you know, with the on and off lockdowns and stuff, where what really matters, and also the things you're deprived of, you know, during the lockdown, deprived of seeing friends and loved ones and stuff, things you we used to just take for
Mhm.
granted have now become precious moments. But
Absolutely.
let's not get maudlin, because I want to talk about music, and you are back with, as I
Yes.
mentioned in the introduction,
Okay.
a really wonderful song called Moving Too Fast. And before we dig any deeper, I think we should have a listen to it. Should we do that?
Absolutely.
Okay,
I'd love
folks,
to.
you're going to love this. Sit back, guys, put your phones on silent and enjoy Moving Too Fast by today's guest, Claire Littley.
Slow down, slow down, slow down, slow down, slow down. Ooh, slow down, slow down, slow down.
That was Moving Too Fast by today's wonderful guest, Claire Littley, with, I might add, a bass line to die for. Yeah, I noticed these things. Now, I want to pick up on a particular lyric, and I have written it down. You're moving too fast, and you know it won't last because you're lost in a fantasy. Now, Claire, I am very concerned that you are perpetuating the old lesbian trope, the stereotype of 3 dates and you're moving in together with a cat, or have I completely misunderstood the lyric?
Well, this is the point. This is what the song is about. That, you know, slow down, lady. You're living so fast. You know, so it's actually about, you know, slowing down. I think that you know, it's obviously about relationships, but I think generally we live our lives at such speed and so fast. But the chorus, you know, it is touching on that. You know, and I think most of us have done that at one point or another. You know, you start something and suddenly it's like, oh, it's a relationship, and it happened overnight, and you're in and it's like, whoa, and then 2 months later you kind of realize we don't actually know each other. I don't like you, she doesn't like me.
Now, in your own dating history, are you the one who moves too fast? Are you the one who says to the other party, whoa, you're moving too fast?
Well, I think I'm guilty of moving too fast, and I think that where I am now is that it's really important to take that time to get to know someone before I'm in another relationship. I think, you know, it takes a good 3 or 4 months before, however honest and open someone is, you know, knowing ourselves takes time, doesn't it? Getting to know someone else.
Yeah. I mean, I've been in my relationship for over 20 years. I don't think, if it ended tomorrow, I don't think, you know, with a magic wand, I don't think I could inflict my disgusting personal habits on anybody else. You know, when you get to a certain age, you think, oh, you know, I couldn't put anyone through this, you know, so I better stick with it and be on my best behavior. So you obviously love your music. What's on your playlist right now? What you're listening to?
Gosh, do you know what? I get quite obsessed. I'm working on another track, and then actually my own stuff. And I think when I'm in that mode, I kind of tend to obsessively go back to it and iterate, and, you know, faff with this bit, faff with that bit. I've been listening to more pop songs actually, because I think the music, I've only released 4 songs. I've only, you know, it's all very new, so I'm still finding my sound, I think. But there's clearly a soulful element, but there's also a pop element that's coming through. And the sort of the comparisons with George Michael and Lisa Stansfield, I think, reflect that. So I've been listening to more pop songs recently. Ed Sheeran's song Shivers. I was listening to that earlier today when I went for a walk. And, you know, some of the best songs are so simple, really, really quite simple, but there's so much hard work that goes into simple.
So for your legions of fans, which I'm guessing there'll be even more of once they've watched this interview and heard the track, have you got anything else in the pipeline? And are you planning to do anything live, obviously Omicron permitting?
Yeah, I'd love to. I think, you know, again, this time last year, Rob, I'd literally sort of September, I'd bought my little Machine Micro, which is kind of my little workstation. You know, I've got a little keyboard, Machine Micro, and a lot of software sounds, and that's how I write the song. So I was just literally unwrapping that and starting to learn how to use it a year ago. So I've got about nearly 30, 40 songs. The last 2 I released completely on my own, so I'd not done any mixing or mastering before, so I had a curve of learning Logic as well to do all of the mix and mastering. I've been consuming YouTube videos like they're going out of fashion. I mean, literally learning. I'm working on a bunch of songs at the moment, and I'm looking for some. I'm actually collaborating with an old friend on some stuff, and potentially looking for some other collaborators now, because I don't think I can do everything on my own at the pace I've been going at. It's I've been on a bit of a mission to establish some credibility for myself as a songwriter, and coming from a very non-musical background completely. I actually was listening to one of your interviews earlier with the lady that was on X Factor, who she said her whole family was, you know, she said she lives across the road from you. Apparently.
Oh, another one. Yes, my third X Factor person, Melanie Masson.
That's right.
Melanie,
yes.
yeah. Wow, she's got I mean, she's a very different singer to you. She is a powerhouse, not, you know, she really is a powerhouse voice. And in fact, during the lockdowns, she would sing to the neighborhood. Really, you know, dragging an amp into the front garden and with a backing track and entertain the neighborhood. It was quite a beautiful thing, actually.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah.
So, well, yeah, we're almost at the opposite ends of the spectrum in a way, because my background is completely not like hers, so not musical at all. So the imposter syndrome that I had years ago when I first was sort of working with, you know, the guys at Abbey Road and feeling like, oh my God, these are amazing musicians and, you know, I'm not worthy. I think now I'm older, I don't feel like that, but I feel like creativity is creativity, and you get there how you get there. But I sort of feel that I've wanted to establish some credibility for myself, really, as much as to show anyone else. And I also think you know, I'd love that to be an inspiration to people, that to have a go at something, you know, because I'm working, I'm doing stuff in my spare time. Okay, I have a talent for, you know, music or singing, but we all have something, I think, that sometimes is undiscovered, and just trying things sometimes, and, you know, you never know what might come up from that. So yeah, I'm working on some songs. I'm wanting to complete an album by middle of next year. I'd like to do that.
Fantastic.
And be doing some live gigs as well. It's been a long time since I've done any live stuff, so that will be amazing.
And if you and when that's all settled, if you do get some dates settled, that's going to be on your website. Yeah, we'll put the address of that across the screen and online and everything, including your socials, so people can follow you. And you really don't need to have imposter syndrome. You really don't. You have the voice of an angel. It has the quality and a purity that is, it is rare, and I won't say unparalleled, because some beautiful singers out there, but it is a rare quality, your voice, and I just love listening to you. Claire, the clock, I am afraid, has beaten us, and it only remains for me to say, Claire Littley, thank you for joining us, and to wish you much love, luck and happiness. Thank you.
Lots of love to you too.